I would like to call the 28th of February, 2023 Committee of the Whole public meeting to order. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on unceded Algonquin homelands. I would like to thank the Algonquin nations for hosting this meeting on their land. I'd like to now call for a mover to approve the agenda. Trustee Dixon, does anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. I would like to now ask if anyone has an interest to declare. Please do so now. Seeing none. So we're moving on to number 5, matters for action. I now call upon Director Giroux to introduce report 23-015.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We are very pleased tonight to present to you a very fulsome report on the facilities renewal program and a school condition improvement funding. And I will invite Associate Director Gerwa and Manager of Facilities Dan Bradley to come to the table, and they will walk you through this report. As I mentioned, it's a fulsome schedule of all of the work that we do in schools, and there's a specific funding structure, and they can speak to the details of that and answer any questions you have about the project work.
Through you, Chair. Thanks for having me tonight. So report 23015 is seeking approval for the overall renewal budget plan, which is funded through SRA school renewal allocation and SCI dollars, school condition index allocation. The intent of the SCI funding is to target those major building infrastructure components. The report covers approximately $112 million over the next 2 years, which includes a carry forward of approximately $45 million of SCI funding, which is due typically to deferred or delayed projects. This year's plan is approximately $65 million and covers over 200 projects. Over the last 10 years, the board has received approximately $400 million in SCI funding and completed over 1,600 projects of varying size and complexity. Outline the report, there's discussions on accessibility. Physical accessibility projects continue to be a focus for staff, and the type of work is outlined within the report. Staff has retained an architectural firm to complete an audit of all our facilities in order to provide a guide for a multi-year plan to reduce physical barriers within our facilities. There's approximately $4 million of planned work for accessibility this year, but we always complete numerous reactionary projects based on student movement and need over and above planned work. The sustainability section outlines our approach to incorporating sustainable strategies when undertaking renewal projects. Much of this focus is on carbon footprint reduction through the implementation of electrification of mechanical systems where possible, and the reduction of natural gas consumption through upgrades of our building envelope and roof systems. LED lighting upgrades continue to be an important part of the renewal program as it provides energy savings and collaboration with renewed spaces. This year's plan includes provisions for the installation of 13 solar arrays, which will operate as net metering to offset our electrical utility costs. Staff continue to manage the lingering supply chain and labor impacts of the global pandemic. Projects are reviewed and planned accordingly based on delivery of major equipment and complexity of manpower. Some of the projects identified for the summer of 2024 are due to long lead times for certain pieces of major equipment. Staff are well underway with the design for all the projects identified within the report.
I just add, one of the reasons we brought this forward, initially planned to bring it forward to the board agenda and have it here before you tonight, is because of the amount of work underway. And the manager talked about the delays in construction processing. And so dealing with this evening allows us to start moving forward on that work sooner rather than waiting another month and coming forward. And that can make all the difference between what we can accomplish in the summer and what carries into the school year. And we try to minimize that wherever possible. So happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Aziz.
If we can insert an evil laugh sound effect, I have a list of questions to your dismay about this exciting work, because I think there's some important work to be done, and I'm really excited to see that this is a long report. So I will start with one question and then hopefully go back to the chair and make sure that it was answered, if that's okay with you guys. So on page 3, you talk about at least one inclusive washroom for students and staff at every facility. I was wondering, just for clarification, is that just one bathroom for the school, or one inclusive bathroom for staff, one inclusive bathroom for students?
Through you, Chair, that would be one inclusive washroom for staff and one for students. They're separate.
Wonderful. Thank you. My next question, if I can find it, to my own dismay. I was wondering, because this is such a massive undertaking in terms of, bringing up these projects to speed, if there was an opportunity to incorporate student learning into some of this work, because I think this is a fantastic opportunity looking at the number of projects that are being undertaken. And is that something that's possible to work with program and learning about?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, that's certainly, there's opportunity to learn. When we built the Broadview Public School, we did incorporate some building learning design within that facility. So if you go through that building, you'll see there's areas where we have walls cutouts, or you can see through plexiglass some of the building components, but there certainly is more opportunity for students to be incorporated, say, in the design process, the construction process, maybe at the secondary level as well, in the construction programs. So certainly something we can look into.
Thank you. I think that would be, for lack of a better term, very cool for our students to learn more. On page, I guess it's Appendix B, page 3. I'll give everyone a second to flip. Just a question of clarification. I see under the interior flooring unrestricted various sites, I see the zones listed. Are those correlated to our zones as trustees?
Through you, Chair, those would be correlated to the superintendency zones.
Perfect. My next question is about the monitoring listed on the same appendix, page 4. So I guess the next page. What does monitoring refer to in that instance of the various sites and then the listed of schools from Confederation Education Center down to the West Carleton Secondary School?
Through Chair, there are a few sites within the district that do have contaminated soil. So annually, we're required to monitor them as to their condition.
I see on the next page portable upgrades listed. Can I ask for clarification on that?
Through you, Chair. So portable upgrades, we have obviously many portables within the district of varying age. So on an annual basis, we would upgrade multiple portables to bring them, to renew them, much like we do at school. So it'd be replacing flooring, windows, siding, electrical, lighting, mechanical systems.
So standard up. Okay. Yep. Just specific to portables. Perfect. On page 5, I see the solar program described. Which I think is very exciting. My question is why these specific schools were chosen. Was there a specific reason or rationale?
Through you, Chair. So the solar arrays typically follow the roofing program. And so what we do is we assess the condition of the roof for suitability. So over and above the condition or the age of the roof, we do look at structure. So there are many facilities within the district that can't support the solar arrays. So then we'll move on to the next group of schools.
Thank you. And I'm just looking at the school condition improvement list that starts on page 6 of that same appendix. I see specific to a concern that's been raised specifically for W. Erskine Johnson and Canada. On page 8, there is the description of John Young, another school in our district, receiving a bus drop-off lane expansion. I'm wondering if that's something that we can introduce in Wedge as well, a W. Erskine Johnson.
Through you, Chair, that's certainly something we can look at. Typically, expansions to the bus loops are based on feedback from the site, if there has been a safety concern or if we work with OSDON.
That's something that I've been speaking with the principal about
Okay.
and some neighbors there. So, I mean, we can chat offline further, but I just wanted to flag that quickly. And I guess my last question is regarding the ventilation upgrades and another costing related. Is that something that's included in this list? Is that a school by school basis, or is that a specific set of improvements that need to be made?
Through Chair. So the ventilation upgrades would fall as part of the standard renewal plan. Through COVID, we did upgrade a significant amount of systems throughout the district. You'll see in the renewal plan, there is almost an even distribution of work for the different infrastructure categories. So we try to spread the funding throughout the district because there is significant amount of need.
Regarding.
Thank you, Trustee Aziz.
Oh,
Do you want me to put you on
second speaker list? Yes, please.
speaker list again? Trustee Lyra.
Hello. So I'd like to start by saying thank you for taking concerns that I have raised in previous years and integrating them directly into the report. It took a number of years for us to put a number to what our accessibility gap and the amount of money it would take to increase our accessible spaces to paper. I am a little concerned that we're only investing $4 million a year, given that we have $84 million of gap. And that puts us 21 years and therefore 19 years past the province mandates we must be accessible by this date. I was wondering if you had a comment on that.
So through you, Chair. Yeah, so the amount of investment on the accessibility side, if you look compared to previous years, has increased by, I think last year's 1.5 million, this year we're at 4. The intent of the accessibility audit is to determine our actual needs and requirements on the physical side. The 2025 date that's been put in place, if you recall, there's no current standards for the physical requirements for that. So we're waiting on any kind of information from the ministry as far as what the expectations are for the implementation of accessibility changes, which is another reason why we did that audit now, is to get ahead of that curve. Once they determine what the requirements are, we're going to have the information from the third-party consultant to use to guide us through that process. So we continue to review and continue to add accessibility projects. And if you look at the report, there's 4 million allocated this year in SCI and 3 million next year. We can certainly add additional projects next year based on the increased SCI funding.
Okay. My second question is about the cost that you've quoted for improving the boiler systems to not be fossil fuel burning. You just sort of said they're prohibitively expensive. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure, through you, Chair. So we review each site kind of case by case as far as mechanical system upgrades, and depending on the site, the efficiency on, say, a heat pump heating plant is far greater than that of an electric boiler plant. Sometimes when staff review the site, they look at the potential of electric boilers. However, if the electrical infrastructure can't support it, then the major capital upfront cost now goes up by $400,000 to upgrade the electrical systems or to support that single boiler system. What we're looking at transferring the bulk of our systems is to a heat pump system with some gas fire backup. That reduces our greenhouse gas emissions per site by about 50%. So yes, we're still going to have some greenhouse gas emissions throughout the district. However, our current approach and plan is to reduce that significantly. So we may go through a life cycle of that boiler before everything becomes electrified.
So I did have a question about the backup. So is the backup intended to be used 3 times a year when it hits -30, or is the backup intended to be used 60 times a year anytime it's below 0? Like, what kind of range are we expecting, or what kind of fossil fuel burning are we expecting our backups to be doing?
Through you, Chair. So based on our energy modeling of typically the district, we're looking at about 20 to 21 times annually that we use fossil fuels.
Okay.
So that's where we derive that kind of 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, is based on the modeling of those degree days.
Was that per site, or was that
per site?
Okay, thanks. Those were all of my questions.
Thank you, Trustee Lyra. Is there anyone? Oh, Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the report. Looking through the very lengthy list, I noticed a whole bunch of things talking about entry ceiling replacements and lighting upgrades and things. Is there some reason why we have so many issues with needing to do something about entry ceilings in a lot of different schools?
Through chair, I think this is just incorporated into the lighting replacement, Trustee Scott. We find that the lighting upgrades within buildings provide significant impact overall to the optics and the energy reduction. As far as specifically, is there an issue with entrance issues? I don't think so. I think it's just part of the current plan that staff are working with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Scott. Is there anyone else who would like to speak first before we go back to second? Okay, Trustee Aziz, back to you.
Stuck with me again. So I guess I'm clarifying myself. Oh, can you hear me when I look at the, okay. Page 6 of the original or the first part of the report, not the appendix, mentions the point 10 COVID-19 resilience infrastructure. It says the remaining 5.1 million will be expensed by the new project completion date, the very last line of that. Can I ask for clarification on that point first?
Through you, Chair. So originally the expenditure of the CVRS funding from the federal government was, I believe, December 31st of 2021. They extended that to December 31st of 2023. So we've undertaken the bulk of that work. As you can see, there's, I think, $5 million remain to complete, which will have expense by the end of 2023.
Okay. So my question is it possible to incorporate monitoring of our CO2 levels as a part of the improvement upgrade plan? Is that something that's financially feasible?
Through Chair. So the monitoring of the CO2 within a building is incorporated within our building automation systems. So if you look at some of the projects we're undertaking in the automation system, it's incorporated in that. It's not specifically identified as a line item within the report, but the CO2 monitoring is a component that we can easily add on to the building automation, which we are doing or have done. We did a lot of it through the CVRS funding already.
And sorry, just to clarify, that includes public reporting. So having the CO2 levels available for the public to see, because you guys have already that spreadsheet, which is really handy to see the, the filters and whatnot. So is that possible?
Through Chair, public reporting on that information, I'd have to look into it and get back to you.
We'll follow up. Don't worry. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Aziz. Is there any other speakers? So we do have a recommendation on the report. Can I get a mover for the Trustee Lee?
No further introduction.
So all of those do we need to read out the recommendation? Okay, we're going to have it shared on the screen. There we go. Thank you. So all of those in favor of the recommendation? And opposed? I don't see any. So the recommendation carries. Thank you for the report.
Thanks to Manager Bradley for his impressive knowledge of our building systems and construction work.
So we're moving on to matters for discussion. I call now Director Giroux to introduce report 23-021.
Thank you very much. And Strategic Business Analyst Andrea Rahim is going to join us and I think has a short PowerPoint presentation to excuse me, to give you an update on where we are in our strategic planning process and talk about the next step or the last stages of the environmental scan. And before she does that, I will just give a plug that she's been asking me to do. And that is for those of you who are hopefully completed your one-on-one interviews, if you have not yet had a chance to complete the reflection document, Andrea is looking to do some consolidated reporting on that. So if you could submit those to her, and I have some outstanding ones as well. So I will add myself to that list of people who need to report back to her. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Hey, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, for the plug to get those one-on-ones done. That was on my list to talk about in the presentation this evening. So that's great. So with that in mind, the data collection for the consultation is quickly wrapping up. And so a huge thank you to the Board of Trustees and the senior team for engaging in those one-on-one conversations and really prioritizing the rich stories of the community and giving many students, parents and caregivers and staff the opportunity to dig deep and share their stories with the leaders and the decision makers who are going to be using this information to formulate our next strategic plan. So very exciting to be engaging in those conversations. Today was also the last day for small group conversations. We've received many submissions from our advisory committees, school councils, groups of teacher colleagues, as well as student groups and community partners and organizations that are engaging in conversations, using the toolkit, and sharing their feedback back with us. So thanks to everyone who engaged in those conversations as well. Our large group conversations are also complete. We had a great turnout from both staff and from families. You will recall that our meeting that was scheduled for Ottawa Tech was canceled due to a storm earlier this year, but we are planning on heading there on May 15th for a discussion on the draft plan as we get moving forward on that. So save the date to mark your calendar for that opportunity as we continue to move forward with this consultation. Electronic feedback was collected from February 10th to February 24th. These online exchanges engaged over 2,300 parents and caregivers, over 1,100 staff, and almost 1,100 students. An analysis of that qualitative data is also underway and will be shared with you in a fulsome report that consolidates the qualitative data from this consultation. In addition, we are doing school-based consultations. You'll recall that we identified 6 schools to develop school profiles where we really get the opportunity to do a bit of a 360 at that school and what we're hearing is most important for student learning and well-being. We are halfway through those and the remaining 3 will be wrapped up by the end of next week. So moving forward to the environmental scan that was included on your agenda, a reminder that the environmental scan is really a compilation of data that creates a profile of the district and is intended to serve as a resource document which shares highlights and which directs you to further data sources so that you have the opportunity to explore more information. So of course, the environmental scan doesn't have all of the data that we have as a district, and there may be areas that you find you want to dig deeper. And we've tried to link to many of those in the call-out buttons throughout the report. And there are still many other reports still underway as well, such as those on the budget or upcoming reports on student achievement that will also be important for us to consider alongside this environmental scan as we're developing the next strategic plan. So for the purpose of tonight's discussion on the environmental scan, we've added sections on the community, which highlights demographic data and population forecasts, among other information. Data on the political landscape, so a bit more of a focus on the board and relationships with other organizations. Economics, most of which is related to our budget, but we did include information on the broader economic situation as well. And finally, local and global trends and events, which includes some information highlighting technology, human rights, impacts of the pandemic, and environmental issues. So the data presented does provide some recent history. It includes internal and external factors and gives some important context for the data that we've already talked about around students and staff that were presented at previous committees of the wholes, as well as some context for some data that we'll be hearing throughout the consultation that we'll be sharing with you shortly. So as a reminder for some questions for reflection as we're working our way through the environmental scan, thinking about what the data tells us about our strengths as a district, areas for improvement, gaps that needs to be addressed, and some trends that have surprised us or caught our attention moving forward. So I'll open the floor for questions.
Thank you. Trustee Kaplan-Worth.
Thank you for your wonderful report. And I have a question which I think probably it's just that there isn't sufficient detail here. So through you, Chair, my question is, on page 9, where we're looking at enrollment trends, I know that it's unique to Ottawa that we have so many students in early French immersion, but I'm wondering where when we're building the strategic plan, we need to have the data on who are those 66.9% who are enrolled in French immersion, looking at in terms of equity and diversity, what's their socioeconomic status? Are they newcomers to Canada? Are they students with disabilities? Do they have any other exceptionalities? And then I'm looking at when we go from grades 1 to 3 to 4 to 8, what happens in terms of the rate of attrition? Who is it that's dropping out of French immersion, and why? And I think, you know, in order for us to be able to really develop a good strategic plan, that's where we need to look at what are our strengths and who are we losing, and who is being disadvantaged by not being part of the early French immersion.
Yeah, great questions. Through you, Chair. We do have some data from previous years that is available on our website. However, it was not included in this report because we are currently producing some more up-to-date information that does have those numbers. So the reports that we currently have available are based on data from 2019 to 2020. And the report that'll be coming forward in April looks at the more recent data. So that will be important information on student achievement that does look at disaggregation with program pathways, as well as grade 10 credit accumulation as an indicator for graduation rates. So an opportunity to look at some of that data disaggregated at both the elementary and the secondary level.
Is that it, Trustee Keppenworth? All right, thank you. Seema Lamba?
Okay, so I have like a follow-up question. I just want to confirm. So you're going to put demographic information once it's updated. I had it around who's in the English immersion as well. So I think I heard that will be there, as well as around grade 10 classes as well. But I was also thinking it would be useful to have some information about the discipline by demographic. I know in about 2020, 2021 or 21, 22, there was a report out of discipline by demographics. I think that would be useful as well. I don't know if you have a thought on that.
That data is available, and certainly we can provide that information. And for that data report that you're speaking to, I don't think that there is a more current report than the one that's being referenced.
Okay, because my overall recommendation would be to put in the demographics and by subgroups wherever you can throughout this environmental scan, because there are differences. Also in the staff area, I think it would be useful to have demographics by positions, right? Like not specific positions, but sort of management or senior management versus the different groups of level. I don't see that, and I know there's quite a bit of underrepresentation in some groups in that, but I think it'll even be more highlighted when we see those breakdowns, I think, but I haven't seen that. Is that possible?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we have to think about what data is available and what information we can come back to, and what is possible in the time frame for this particular report, because where we are in the planning process is we're at the end of February, and we're 1 month from when we have our conversations. So we can provide some additional data that's available, but we have a small team of one working on the coordination of all of the different pieces. So I don't want to overcommit the incredible leaps and bounds that Andrea is able to accomplish. And we'll see what information is available and how it can be shared.
Sure. I think it'll be, just to follow up on that, thank you for that. It'll be useful, especially when we're looking forward, like, for example, how will the hiring policy be used, the equitable hiring policy, especially in different positions. And I have just one last comment. The report is really well done. So I want to say that if I haven't said that from the beginning. So thank you for such a detailed report. And I appreciate it at the end having things on the human rights and the environmental and the community. But what I actually, like, it's an environmental scan. What I didn't see coming out of some of this was like what we now know around Indigenous issues or anti-Black racism that sort of has come to the forefront. And some hate that's been happening. And I think we heard it a few, meetings on anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Asian hate as well, right? So I'm not seeing that reflected in the environmental scan. I think it's really important to say, these are important issues too, as well. That was my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamba. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, we're moving on to new business. Is there any new business? Seeing none, I now declare this meeting adjourned.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the February 28th, 2023 public board meeting to order. I want to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin homelands. Reconciliation is not a box that we tick. It is an ongoing process to right historic and ongoing wrongs, and I would like to thank the Algonquin Nation for hosting this meeting on their land. I now look for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. I see Trustee Milburn, seconded by Trustee Jennings. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as presented? And all opposed? And that passes. I'm now looking for anyone to declare potential conflicts of interest. Seeing none, I'd now like to move on to delegations. I'm going to look to Alec Golijanin to introduce for your presentation. And as I understand it, you are on Zoom. All right, Alec, you have 4 minutes. You may begin.
Thank you very much. My name is Alec Golijanin, and the purpose of my presentation is to leave everyone here with a new lens to expand the way we think about arriving at solutions. So let's begin. Next slide, please. Tonight's talk will be centered around 2 reports. The first is a 2021 report published by the Public Health Agency of Canada, which focuses on the Blueprint for Action model, a comprehensive school health approach that activates various stakeholders to better prevent substance-related harms among youth. The second is a report that was put together by me and a team of health professionals, and it was submitted to the province in 2022. The purpose of this report was to introduce decision makers to new ways of thinking about how we can leverage technology to bridge public healthcare services with underserved communities. Next slide, please. The Blueprint for Action model was developed in 2020, and after Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tham, sounded the alarm on problematic substance use amongst youth in her 2018 State of Public Health in Canada report. The Blueprint for Action model combines framework for informing action on school health matters and 4 evidence-based approaches to preventing substance-related harms, which revolve around upstream prevention, harm reduction, stigma reduction initiatives, and equity-oriented interventions. In a nutshell, the Blueprint for Action model aims to encourage a different way of thinking about how to approach youth substance use by saying yes to evidence and no to one-size-fits-all interventions. And it supports school stakeholders with engaging their networks by increasing attention, buy-in, and resources for long-term approaches. Next slide. Our report centered around leveraging tech solutions to ensure for more equitable health outcomes amongst adolescents, and we identified high school guidance counselors as key focal points. Our report found that adolescents which were most likely to experience healthcare inequities were adolescents who were members of racialized groups and whose families were residing in low-income communities, and it was not uncommon for them to be early generation Canadians. These adolescents were also more likely to experience negative health outcomes as a result of substance use and other actions, and the only surefire way for them to experience success in life was through education. That is why we highlight the difference-making role high school guidance counselors can play, but they can only do so if they're provided with the necessary tools and supports. So let's take a look at a demo of a tool that was designed with high school guidance counselors in mind. Next slide. We begin by inputting a postal code. Depending on the person's location, the system will generate a list of doctors nearest to them and provide them with the contact information. A pro-ready application form is accessible below the postal code search bar, and other important forms to be as well. 20 seconds and 2 simple steps is all it would take to make a difference in this situation. But for something like this to be actionable, it requires the health and all policies approach. Next slide, please. A health and all policies approach considers the health implications of decisions across sectors, synergies, and avoiding harmful health effects of policies outside the health sector in order to improve both population health and health equity. It is a collaborative approach that aims to improve health by incorporating a health lens into decision-making across sectors and policy areas. Now let's go over some recommendations. Next slide. The first recommendation has to do with having open calls for proposals related to health equity and other matters that impact adolescents, and which could be bettered by changing the policies around non-solicited submissions. The second recommendation has to do with prioritizing multi-sectoral partnerships with health and all policies in mind, where every potential stakeholder is considered and activated for more effective and wider reaching supports. These suggestions may seem like no-brainers, but they're not occurring in practice, and that is something every school board has the power to change. Last slide, please. I want to conclude tonight's talk with the reaffirming words made famous by one little learner, because they also represent the impact schools can have on children. I am smart, I am blessed, and I can do anything. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I now look to my trustee colleagues. Are there any questions of clarification? Oh, Trustee Aziz.
Just to clarify if I missed during your presentation, have you approached Ottawa Public Health? Am I allowed to ask that? Have you approached Ottawa Public Health with this presentation?
We haven't approached Ottawa Public Health. The organizations or the stakeholders that we've approached really started with the province, and the province directed us to approach the school boards directly and see how we can make things happen. But it's really a multi-stakeholder approach that's required to get something like this off the ground.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no further questions, thank you for your presentation. I'm now looking to Tulin Alshayer. Tulin, you have 4 minutes. You may begin.
Good evening. I want to begin by introducing myself. My name is Tulin Alshayer, and I am a 17-year-old Palestinian Canadian, currently a senior student at A.Y. Jackson Secondary School, who has been in the OCDSB school board for the majority of my life. That is 14 years of my life where I spent 6 hours a day for about 194 days a year. In a school board that preaches acceptance, anti-racism, inclusion, and safety, you'd think my experience for the past 14 years was encouraging of who I am and helped me develop my identity in a way that is true to who I am at core. But indeed, due to my background as a Palestinian, I experienced the opposite. Let me share a story of my first experience with anti-Palestinian racism when I was in 5th grade, only 10 years old. I'm sure many educators here know of an activity within the curriculum that many teachers board-wide use, especially when educating on geography or social studies. The MAP activity, an activity that hasn't left my mind since my experience back almost 7 years ago. The MAP activity asks students to put a pin on a big map somewhere in the class so teachers can continue referring back to it year long to show all the different backgrounds, identities, and cultures within our classroom. The only issue was my identity was not there. I stood in the back of my classroom with a pen in hand, simply looking, so hopeful, to see Palestine, the country that my parents taught me growing up to be so proud of. As my classmates went up and put their pens and headed back to their seats, I remained the last one standing, still looking for my country. As I slowly started to realize I wouldn't find it, I felt nothing but a pit in my stomach from the embarrassment I'd feel heading back to my seat with the pen still in hand, as I clearly wasn't accepted or welcomed in that classroom. Before I could head back, a friend of mine came up and helped me place my pen. He took it from my hand and placed it on Israel next to his. My heart dropped as he turned to tell me, Palestine doesn't exist. You're from Israel. A sentence that was beyond hurtful and disrespectful to who I am and to my people back home in the country of Palestine. A part of me will forever blame the school board for this experience, as they were not inclusive and aware of the Palestinian individuals within their board. 7 years later, I am still facing the same feelings. I'm still facing the same feelings and of neglect. And for the board that preaches the opposite, I think it's safe to say, do better. I can assure you, I am only one of many who have encountered similar situations and feelings, and can assure you that this board has done nothing about it. Our identity should not be about politics. Our identity should not be a sensitive topic, and above all, our identity should not be dismissed. We were promised equality, so why can't we see it? Practice what you preach, as they say. Palestine should not be a censored topic in classrooms. When you censor Palestine, you censor us. Why can't we speak about our origins like our classmates can? When our teachers are the ones who we tend to look up to as role models for most of our lives are the ones silencing us, I'm sure you can guess how that feels. It's important to invest in educating our educators. You promised us equality, anti-racism, inclusion, safety, and acceptance, and we are here to hold you accountable to that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I now look to my trustee colleagues. Are there any questions of clarification? Seeing none, thank you for your delegation.
Thank you.
I am now looking for Alenia Kilik. You have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elena Killick, and I am a current grade 12 student at A.Y. Jackson Secondary School. I have been a student within the OCDSB for most of my life. I started as a student in elementary school. I attended John Young Elementary School, then I went to Glencairn Middle School, and now I'm at A.Y. Jackson Secondary School. I'm also a student senator for A.Y. Jackson, and I represent our school to the school board within the student trustees. Today, I want to bring forward a very important subject. This subject is about anti-Palestinian racism, also known as APR. This is a very prevalent issue within our school, within A.Y. Jackson, as well as within our school board. And I believe that it deserves the attention that I'm going to be presenting today. I would like to start off by saying that I am not a Palestinian person. I'm not Palestinian. I do not have that identity. However, I think it's important to express that I also understand how Palestinian students feel. Today, I will be sharing a story where I had experienced in my grade 9 geography class, and I will also be expressing how this appears to be as someone who is non-Palestinian. I will first start by saying that in my high school experience, I had always envisioned being in a community full of people that would come from different backgrounds, ethnicities, and cultures. These were the very many aspects that made me enjoy going to school because as a student, I do appreciate meeting new people and connecting through our differences. And in my grade 9 geography class, I remember it was an introduction to the global map, and our teacher had pointed at Palestine. Our teacher had pointed at Palestine, however, refused to call it by its name and made it very clear that they did not want to acknowledge Palestine whatsoever. That very incident stuck with me and made me question, why is Palestine censored within our education? That very moment also stuck inside the heads of the Palestinian students that were in that classroom. They felt embarrassed, they felt confused, and they felt unheard of. And quite frankly, the comment that that teacher had made was extremely inappropriate and did not belong within a classroom, especially when it's a classroom that has people of Palestinian identity. Again, this made me question the need for Palestinian censorship. As students, we are naturally drawn to the world around us. We want to learn about the world around us. However, when we are faced with censorship, we are not able to understand the different voices around us. We do not understand why there is censorship. And to this, I ask the board, why are we continuing to censor Palestine? It is our very human fundamental rights to know and understand the voices of Palestinian students. So again, I ask the board if they could please take into consideration and all the trustees that are listening here today. As mentioned in the model, I'm asking that the OCDSB commits to ongoing engagement with the Palestinian community to continuously design, update, and deliver training and resources on anti-Palestinian racism, also known as APR. I ask that this is becoming a module that is processed within our school board so that Palestinian students can finally feel safe, welcome, and accepted within their own school board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I now look to my colleagues. Do I see any questions of clarification? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I now look for Jabir Dadi. You have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jabir Gadi, and I'm currently a first-year university student studying political science and international human rights and conflict studies. I'm a former OCDSB student and have been on the board for my entire life, starting kindergarten at Mary Honeywell Elementary School, going to CW Middle School, finishing my OCDSB education at John McCreary Secondary School. Throughout my time as a student in the OCDSB, there was this constant feeling of ignorance and unfair treatment against the entire notion of being pro-Palestinian. Simply existing as an advocate in support of Palestine was always deemed as too political. Discussing our experiences of our culture was shut down as being radical, and most importantly, speaking out and spreading awareness of the atrocities committed on our family back home was constantly, without fail, dismissed as anti-Semitic. It is crucial for me to preface that Palestinian identity and representation is completely disassociated with the religion of Judaism, and to suggest that being vocal about Palestinian struggles is an exercise of anti-Semitism is blatant representation of silencing Palestinian voices and a major form of the new definition we urge the OCDSB to consider as APR, anti-Palestinian racism. Silencing Palestinian activism has been extremely prevalent within the school board. It was only until recently, spring of last year, when Palestinian Youth Movement of Ottawa, PYM, was created for the students by the students to help create a safe space for Palestinian representation across Ottawa high schools. However, despite this creation of PYM, we have received lots of backlash and are still exposed to a great amount of APR from the OCDSB. I would like to share a story that happened to me in June of 2021, which will provide a glimpse of how APR is exercised by the figures in our board. In June of 2021, many atrocities were being committed against the homes and lives of Palestinians in Palestine. As a result, myself and many others who support Palestine were spreading awareness about this issue, which is our right. A student, I should mention, who was a graduate and no longer an OCDSB student, and for my school what I had posted, despite us being in summer break, and the principal took immediate action because of complaints that were made against my name, calling it as anti-Semitic. All of this simply as a result of me spreading awareness of the atrocities happening to Palestinians. In the same situation, I had a meeting with this principal who refused to be open-minded about my side of the story and shut me down by saying, quote, "I don't want to get into geopolitics." My story is one of many stories as an example of APR that is so present in the OCDSB. Palestinian students as a part of the OCDSB feel victimized and discriminated against because authoritative figures working in our schools continuously fail to help these students feel safe. After the creation of PYM, there was a basis to rely on and fall back on as a method of Palestinian representation. I'm sure we have all seen the very huge walkouts and protests that sparked last spring, and this is all as a result of students being completely fed up with APR that exists in our school board, just like my story, as well as many others that we have heard of. The board has failed to meet demands from PYM, and these students are waiting for action to be taken so that they can feel like they are heard. And from we have been seeing and hearing, there's a lack of support for these students. We have been hearing many students that they feel it is necessary to spark more walkouts and protests in order to be heard. Based on the leading events from last year's walkouts, we have seen very clear and urgent patterns mimicking last year's patterns that resulted in these walkouts. I want to make it clear that these walkouts are done as a last resort method when the students feel as though this is their only way to be heard. We often get the question, why now? And that is because we have seen a huge increase of APR in our schools to an unacceptable point where it feels like we have no option but to stand up for the students and by the students. We continuously ask the OCDSB, when will we see change? When will our students feel comfortable and safe to practice their cultures in our schools? When will Palestine be a topic that is not dehumanizing and not taboo? When will the little kids, children, be able to see their country on the map and not feel ridiculed for being Palestinian? When will the OCDSB respond appropriately to the 8 demands that PYM Ottawa is constantly urging? When will Palestinian voices stop being dismissed as anti-Semitic? When can we see an equity position for an Arab or Palestinian in our board? When will our educators be educated about a topic that is so serious to a huge population of our students? The answer to all these questions should have been answered and resolved years and generations ago. But unfortunately, they are still unanswered questions that should not have been asked to begin with. I thank you for your time.
Your time is up. I now look for questions of clarification. Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I would like to ask for clarification because you mentioned that you had posted something and you were reprimanded for it. Did you ever post that a Jewish student was waving her disgustingly atrocious flag with pride with her dumb self and her dumb friend?
No.
Okay. And did you ever post online comparing Nazi-occupied Poland to Israeli-Palestinian politics?
Nazi-occupied Poland with
Israeli-Palestinian politics?
I may have. I'm not 100% sure. I don't recall.
Okay, that is 2 questions of clarification. I now see Trustee Bell.
Thank you very much to the delegations. I know it takes a lot of courage to come up and talk about something that you care so deeply about. I very much appreciate your courage. I will ask the question about shutting down conversations about the experiences, the history within the classroom. If you could clarify if that was in fact your experience with the educators in the classroom, and what you would propose to help rectify that situation. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So to propose basically a solution to this, I mentioned in the speech to meet the 8 demands that PYM has proposed. And I could read those out loud if you'd like. So 1 was ensure the safety of any Palestinian students and staff who may face backlash, unfair accusations, and ill treatment for expressing their cultural identity. 2, empathize with Palestinian student and staff, understand that they are experiencing trauma and are heavily affected by these issues. Do not silence them, but instead provide them with the support through sincere resources. 3, include and support Palestinian voices in human rights and equity education. 4, assure the OCDSB educators and students that they can discuss Palestine, its history, culture, traditions, and resilience freely. 5, consult with major stakeholders in a transparent manner where it comes to nuanced issues of equity, engage students affected by the issue, and offer sincere support. 6, adopt a definition of anti-Semitism that is decolonial and does not perpetuate unfair power relationships between a state and its occupied people. The IHRA definition dehumanizes Palestinians and has been rejected by many universities, faculty, and associations for such reasons. 7, help students organize information session with Palestinian Canadian mentors that can provide them with information and resources regarding the ongoing occupation and how they can support the cause from abroad. 8, and the last one, align OCDSB's stance on human rights with the UN Human Rights Council, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch. The OCDSB Human Rights Office should play a proactive role in addressing the human rights concerns of OCDSB Palestinian staff, students, and allies, and also the definition of APR being adopted in our school board.
Thank you, Jabir. As I do see other questions, but our bylaws allow for up to 3 questions of clarification, and 3 has been reached. So thank you for your delegation. That brings the delegation section to an end. I must now inform everyone that the board has decided to implement a 1-minute response time for answers to questions of clarification moving forward. So that takes us to item 6, the report from the committee in whole. I'm going to look to Trustee Jenikins.
Madam Chair, what happened to 5.5?
That person was unable to make it.
Thank you.
Trustee or Chair Lyra, may I please give the report from the Committee of the Whole in camera?
You can. I had Trustee Jenikins to give that report.
Okay, I've been given the talking points for this.
Great. Go ahead, Trustee Bell.
Thank you. As you know, the board met in camera this evening, and Trustee Jenikins reported that there was 1 recommendation, and on a motion put forth by Trustee Lee, which I will second, that the staff be authorized to proceed as directed in the Committee of the Whole in camera with respect to an appointment of an executive search consultant.
All right, we have had our discussion in camera. So we are going to go straight to the vote. Are we using eScribe for this vote? We are.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Not that it really matters, but I believe that motion was moved by you and not me. And I did not agree to acting as a substitute mover.
Okay, so we're going to need a substitute mover. Would Trustee Jenikins, would you like to substitute move?
Yes, I can move it.
Okay, we now have a substitute mover. So
And I will second.
Okay. So all those in favor of the motion from in camera, please answer your eScribe. Trustee Nash, we are waiting on you. Okay. And that carries 10 in favor, none opposed, 2 abstain, none abstaining, 2 absent. And that should go on the screen. Mm-hmm. We seem to be having a technical hiccup. And these are the results of our vote. All right, that concludes item 6, which brings us to item 7, briefing from the chair of the board. So last week, students and staff across the district marked Pink Shirt Day. It was an important moment to celebrate kindness and reflect on how we came together to stop bullying in our community. Bullying and harassment is an issue that too many students continue to face from their peers. In the parent message on Friday, the OCDSB shared some examples of how schools marked this day. Resources were also provided to help deal with bullying. We ask parents and guardians to help us by reminding their students that there are actions they can take if they witness bullying. This includes reporting any concerned incidents to the principal, vice principal, a teacher, a trusted adult, the OCDSB cares, or anyone else who can help. To speak out, if it is safe to do so, bystanders can speak out against bullying, violence, harassment, hate, or discrimination. To be kind, comfort the person who was hurt and make it known that what was happened was not fair or deserved. Be friends, ask what you can do to help. Stop the spread of online content, videos, or images that cause further harm. As a community, we can and must stand together against bullying, hate, and discrimination. Second, over the past month in our schools, we have seen students and staff mark Black History Month through performances, art, special events, school displays, classroom lessons, and more. This has been great to see, and we look forward to the learning continuing throughout the year. On Saturday, March 25th at Brookfield High School, the OCDSB will partner with Parents for Diversity for a parent advocacy conference on supporting Black students. Registration deals can be found on our website. And finally, in the wake of growing anti-trans public sentiment, including the murder of prominent trans youth Brianna Gee in the UK and the passing of anti-trans legislation in US states such as Tennessee, the board and the district reaffirm our commitment to protecting the rights of gender diverse, trans, and all LGBTQ students at the district. And that concludes my report. I now look to the director for your briefing.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to start, and the students have left, but by acknowledging the students who came forward to delegate tonight and share their concerns, and wanted to confirm that the OCDSB equity team are currently reviewing resources to support learning around APR and working with students to support students in their classes and in their schools. And that work also includes working, meeting with student groups, meeting with community partners, to build capacity and grow awareness, and also working in partnership with some other school districts to develop learning resources that can support us in this work. So wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. Also wanted to note that it has been more than a year now since the war in Ukraine began, and while we hope for a peaceful end to that, what I wanted to do was to bring the board up to date on the impact this has had for this district in terms of new students. And it's not something we've updated you on recently, but over the past year, the OCDSB has welcomed approximately 450 students of Ukrainian descent. Fortunately, as a district, we've got considerable experience in supporting newcomer families who arrive in Canada. And I would like to acknowledge the work of our registration staff, the Family Reception Center, the school staff, and students and parents for helping new families settle into our community, and of course, to extend our welcome and appreciation for all of that work and support. Also wanted to speak about our upcoming school climate survey. So the chair in her report talked a little bit about the importance of Pink Shirt Day and the importance of our commitment to supporting trans youth. In March this year, parents and guardians will receive the school climate survey. This is a voluntary and anonymous survey, and it's a chance for parents and guardians to provide feedback at the school level about the extent to which they feel their school supports learning and positive behavior and promotes a safe and caring environment. The information gathered is quite useful. It's useful at the school level and it's useful at the district level. There's a regular cycle to this reporting. So as a new board, you wouldn't have been through it, but there's a survey with parents. Students are surveyed. That's a separate part of the process, as are staff. So watch for more information coming from schools on that. And the survey is available in 12 languages and it will run until March the 24th. And that concludes my report.
All right, I now see two hands. I see Trustee Bell.
Great, thank you. And through you, Chair, I was wondering concerning the safety of schools. I know that we have an ongoing situation right now at Devonshire Community Public School concerning the safety of students and the noise that is resulting from Claridge and the construction is at decibels that likely will be damaging upon dismissal during recess breaks, and it is affecting the school environment, the stress on the educators. I've heard from them. I've heard from the parents as well that they have a number of specific asks that they're keen for the board to move forward to ensure the safety and security of the students. And I was wondering if the director could give an update as part of her update on the current situation and how the board will be moving forward to protect those students. Thank you.
Trustee Bell, this is a fulsome discussion. I think we're going to move this item to new business and we can address it in the full time it deserves.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, I see a question from Trustee Milburn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to, I believe, the Director of Education. So I am hearing from a couple of different families that the Family Assessment Center for getting the Ukraine students settled into their schools has a backlog and that there might be some staffing issues. And I'm wondering if you have any additional information that you can share with the Board of Trustees at this time.
Just to make sure I heard the question properly, the concern was about a backlog with the Family Reception Center and admissions. All right. I can't speak to that in any detail. I am happy to confirm with the staff and follow up with you and see whether if there are in fact issues, whether that's a short-term volume issue or if there's some more structural issues there, but can follow up by a memo.
If I can follow up on that too, if there is any backlog issues, can we bring it back to the next board meeting as well, or committee of the whole, just as an update through your briefing, please?
Certainly, we can better understand the issue and I can update the board. Yep.
All right, perfect. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Trustee Aziz.
Thank you. I wanted to start by acknowledging that it is the end of Black History Month and wanted to thank the staff, students, and members of our community who attended the day of celebration on February 11th. I'm hoping that we can continue to celebrate the students a part of that community throughout the year and not just during the month of February. And for those of you who know me, I'm wearing my Whitney Houston shirt because we got to hear a fabulous student perform a Whitney Houston song on that day. My question actually is to the chair. You mentioned an event coming up this Saturday. Can I ask you kindly to repeat those details, please, and thank you?
March 25th, Brookfield High School. We're partnering with Parents for Diversity, and registration can be found on the website.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we are going to move on to item 9, which is confirmation of the board minutes from the 31st of January, 2023. I'm now looking for a mover and a seconder. I see Trustee Aziz, seconded by Trustee Dixon. All right. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Item 10, business arising from board minutes. Are there any business arising from the board minutes? I see Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Chair Lara. At the previous board meeting, I had asked under new business about the cancellation of exams and what was going to be done in terms of the next round of exams by way of providing access for students to have teachers even if they're not writing exams. I'm getting quite a few questions on this, and I'm wondering if there is any new information, if there is in fact a plan now for how those exam days are going to be handled in June.
Director?
Through Chair, there was a memo to trustees reporting back on the exam days, and I'm looking to see if there's any acknowledgement of that. I definitely saw a draft memo of that, so I'll follow up. The associate director isn't here this evening, but we'll definitely follow up on that. What I can tell you about the exam days is so no exams for 9 and 10, only exams in grade 11 and 12. And we had some variance in practice across the system in terms of how schools use those days. And what we've been focusing on since then is getting a better understanding of what practices were in place and how that time might be well used. Also looking at what the intended purpose of that period of time was, which was credit recovery. And I'm not sure, and I'm looking at my colleagues to see if anyone knows, but I believe the number of credits recovered, if I'm not mistaken, was approximately 450 credits recovered in that time period. So there was a purpose to no exams, and it was around credit recovery. And I hope I have the number right. I'm drawing from memory, but I will follow up with Associate Director Reynolds and make sure that information gets to you. And all of that to say that there were some next step conversations about what the messaging was to the system in terms of effectively using those days in June.
I appreciate that, and I thank you for that much follow-up. I think what the real issue is here is for many students who do not need to do credit recovery and who are not writing exams because they're in grade 9 and 10 are basically having multiple days with no instruction, no access to teachers, and their parents are saying, why are they not actually having access to instruction in those days, or at least time to pursue other projects that might be relevant to their coursework. So I think that's really the big thing, the sense that students were at home doing nothing and should have been at school doing something.
I appreciate the comment, and definitely we'll continue our work to refine what that direction is and clarification.
Anything further, Trustee Scott? Anything further, Trustee Scott? Okay. Seeing no further hands, I'm going to move along to matters for action. That brings us to item 11.1. I'm looking to the Vice Chair to present the report from Committee of the Whole from the 7th of February, 2023.
Thank you, Chair Lyra. I would like to move receipt of the report from CAL, February 7th, 2023.
I'm now looking for a seconder. I see Trustee Milburn. Are there any errors or omissions from this report? Seeing none, all those in favor of receipt? And that passes unanimously. Are there any recommendations, Trustee Bell?
Yes. On a motion by trustee Blackburn, which I will second.
We're going to need a replacement. I see trustee Scott.
Oh,
continue.
Great. So on a motion by trustee Scott, which I will second, that the recommended school year calendar as outlined in report 23-012 be submitted to the Ministry of Education for approval as the official 2023-2024 school year calendar for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board's elementary and secondary schools.
Okay. So we discussed this at the committee of the whole meeting. Does anybody have any questions? I see trustee Scott.
I believe that there was an issue raised with the calendar in terms of this may not in fact end up being the final calendar. So my question in terms of procedure, this is a motion from committee of the whole. Is it something that we're expecting to amend tonight, or will it come back later? And if it's going to come back later, is there any point in approving it tonight if we know it's not going to be the one we do?
Director.
Through you, Chair, our recommendation is that we do proceed tonight. And just to ensure everybody is clear, there is a ministry regulation that establishes the reporting requirements for school year calendars. Annually, the ministry has a practice of providing school districts with a memo with some information about the upcoming school year calendar. This year, that memo has not yet been received. We proceeded in accordance with the regulation, which doesn't make reference to the memo, and have undertaken the consultation and all of the normal steps in the process. We are aware that the ministry is going to send a memo and possibly have a regulation. Our understanding is that regulation may relate to some of the PA days, but it may, from what we know right now, it may be PA day activities. So it may not impact the calendar, but rather how the days are spent. So after some discussion about a lot of unknowns, our recommendation to you is that we proceed this evening. And if there is something in the regulation or the upcoming memo that requires us to make a revision, we understand that when the memo comes, it will extend the reporting timeline. So we would have an opportunity. I believe we have another board meeting before then. But if we could deal with it tonight, and then we'll bring it back for amendment if necessary.
Thank you very much for a very clear and comprehensive explanation.
All right. Seeing no further questions, I'm going to ask, is this a consent item? It looks like it is. So we'll put that on the consent agenda. Trustee Bell.
Thank you so much, Chair. Unfortunately, I do not have the information concerning who the next motion was put forth by. This is the one that's regarding the facilities renewal program and school condition improvement project budget.
Trustee Lee.
Thank you. So on a motion by trustee Lee, which I will second, that the facilities renewal program and school condition improvement project budget in the amount of 112 million, and you guys hopefully can read, everyone can read the rest, be approved as a detailed in Appendix B of Report 23-015, that staff be authorized to proceed with individual project tenders with the facilities renewal program and school condition improvement project plans, that as FRP, SCI projects are tendered based on bid results or as priorities change, additional projects may be added or removed to suit the availability of the overall budget, and these additional projects will be able to proceed without further approval as long as the total FRP, SCI budgets are not exceeded, and report 23-015 facilities renewal program and school condition improvement 2022-23 project plan, page 9, and that the chair of the board and the director of education be authorized to award contracts above 500,000 that is within this overall available uncommitted approved budget. Whew.
All right. And is this a consent item? Seeing no objection, we'll put it on the consent list. And that brings us to our consent list. Can Manager Guthrie, can you please open the roll for all of the things on our consent list. That is the school calendar and the school renewal funds. So if you check your eScribe, it should be up. Now looking again to Trustee Nash. And that is carried. Results on the screen, 10 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining, 2 absent. That concludes matters for action. That brings us to item 12, matters for discussion. I look to one of our OPSBA representatives. Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Chair Lara. A couple of things here. The first and very important thing is that it is now time to be considering whether or not we wish to submit any policy resolutions to the Ontario Provincial School Boards Association for consideration at their annual general meeting in June. These submissions would have to represent a corporate position by way of a motion that we would approve here at our board, addressing an issue with provincial implications. And if possible, we should include some background information and data, if that's applicable, to support whatever proposed action we're seeking. If there is if anyone is interested in considering a potential policy resolution, the deadline for that is they must be submitted by Wednesday, the 12th of April. So that would mean it would have to come to be approved by the board at the March board meeting, which means going to a committee of the whole meeting prior to that. But if anyone has any questions or would like support to work on that, I know that board services in the past has been very helpful, and Trustee Jenikins or I would be happy to assist. Second item is that the survey regarding priorities for the Provincial School Boards Association strategic plan, which was sent to all trustees recently, and a reminder was just sent again. The deadline for submitting your survey response it has been extended by about a week, and we would really appreciate it if we had 12 people around this table sending in their priorities for the OPSBA strategic plan, because it really does make a difference in terms of the provincial advocacy. And just a couple of other things that I will mention. We had a board of directors meeting in Toronto on the 24th and 25th of February. One of the highlights of that meeting was an overview of the Toronto District School Board Centre of Excellence for Black Student Achievement, which was provided by the TDSB System Superintendent for Equity, Anti-Oppression and Early Years, Karen Murray. We do have the slide deck from that, and would be happy to share it with all trustees if anyone is interested. The second thing that was also a very good piece of learning was a session on the background and terminology stemming from some of the questions connected to recent school board equity and human rights related information or issues and misinformation and controversy that was provided by the OPSBA Associate Director for Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, Ken Jeffers. And again, I do have the slide deck that he provided and would be happy to share that with all trustees. And other than that, we had some very good discussions. It was some good learning. It was noted that there are a number of new and important B and SB memos that have been released by the Ministry of Education since since the last Board of Directors meeting we had it. And trustees who are interested in any of those can certainly find them on the ministry website. And you have all seen the public notice that OPSBA sent out with regard to the need to get some kind of a new guideline in place so that boards can in fact rationalize some of their use of school space, whether it's shifting where programs are, changing attendance boundaries and so on. But we really do need the guideline for the provincial for the pupil accommodation reviews. And that concludes my report. And if there are any questions, Trustee Jenkins and I will do our best to answer them.
Thank you, Trustee Scott, for that fulsome report. I saw a question from Trustee Aziz.
Thank you again, Trustee Scott. And I realize I'm turning the mic on, but you're sitting next to me. I was going to ask if you could kindly share that deck with the trustees. It sounded very interesting and informative.
Happy to do so.
Are there any further questions? Seeing no further questions, thank you for the OPSBA report. That brings us to matters for information. Are there any matters for information? Seeing none, that brings us to new business. Trustee Bell.
Thank you very much. Just to add, I come to this conversation wearing two hats. You can never take off your hat as a mother. And my daughter goes to Devonshire Community Public School. I also am the trustee for Somerset Zone 4, which has a number of parents and students that go to Devonshire. To be blunt, it is the loudest sound I have ever heard in my life. It is no doubt, if a child was to go in front of that sound, in my mind, that their ears would be damaged. Your ears would be ringing as an adult if you walk by that sound. And so I very much appreciate all of the work that has been done by Trustee Nash and Superintendent Dua and others. But there are some very important asks that Claridge has not yet agreed to. In particular, what the community, what the school council, what the chairs have asked for is a site liaison. And they've also asked for no excessive noise during drop-off, kinder recess, or dismissal. These requests are very reasonable, and they will ensure the safety of our students, including my daughter. And I would very much like, and I hope that the board would consider writing a letter to Claridge outlining these asks from the community to ensure that they do get met and that is documented what the community has in fact asked for. And the only question that I have for the board at this time is, will we be monitoring the sound levels outside the school during dismissal when the construction noise is present, which it has been at dismissal? Thank you.
All right, I heard two things. I'm going to take your question for the director first. Director, the question about will the school be monitoring noise level?
Through you, Chair. The district is currently monitoring noise levels inside the school, and that will continue. I will look to the superintendent. I am not certain whether or not the district has the equipment to measure external noise readings, which is a complicated process. I know, but definitely there's some work that we can be done. But I would invite Superintendent Dua to join us at the table, because he has been doing a tremendous job working with the school and the community and with the developer to try and negotiate all of the interests in this matter.
Point of order, I cannot hear Prince Dua.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My apologies. Through you, Chair. I had an opportunity to meet with the Claridge representative yesterday, and this followed the meeting they had with the parents, the principal, and the school council regarding the list that you indicated. We had a detailed meeting, and it was very helpful. During the meeting, I was able to go through the list that the parents and the school council and the chair, parents, school council and the principal shared with Claridge, and we discussed each of those individually. And they also were able to provide me documentation of their transportation plan and their plan for the construction moving forward. Claridge also was able to give me more detail in terms of how they will ensure the safety of the students, the staff, and the community moving forward. I have information that I will be sharing with the school council and the principal and the trustee tomorrow. And so I'll follow up with documentation to you after, trustees.
Thank you, Superintendent. So, Trustee Bell, has that answered your question about external monitoring?
It has. I would like us to monitor externally because I believe that children's hearing will be in fact damaged if they have to go outside. So I think it is our responsibility. If at recess there is noise, at dismissal and at drop-off there is noise that could be damaging the ears, that we have a responsibility to ensure that those students are in fact safe and that their ears are not damaged.
Okay. The second part of your initial statement was that you asked the board to permit or to write a letter to Claridge outlining, and then you listed 3 things.
Well, the chairs of the council have set out a list that is detailed. I know that Trustee Nash and Superintendent Dua have that list, and they've asked that the board write a letter. And so, yes, I would like the board to write a letter outlining those asks and be supportive of those asks. And so maybe what could be done at this point is those asks could be shared with the trustees, and a decision could be made on sending a letter to Claridge outlining what I believe are very reasonable asks, such as a site liaison and stopping excessive sound when the students are outside in those periods. Thank you.
Okay. So you asked that the asks of the parent council be shared. Do you know who would have those?
I have the asks.
Okay. Trustee Nash, do you have them now that you wish to share? Trustee Scott.
Madam Chair, to write a letter on behalf of the board in support of something that is clearly a significant issue for the students at Devonshire is not something that should necessarily require a board vote. I think that if the information can be shared with trustees together with a tentative draft letter, so that everybody can have an opportunity to see what would be said on our behalf, we can do it without having to have a vote or a motion or anything, and simply go ahead and get it done, because obviously now is the time to get it done.
If that's the precedent we want to set, then I'm very happy to take it offline and we can send around a draft email.
And the letter will be public in due course in any event.
Yep. Okay. Trustee Bell, are you content?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Is there anything else for new business? Seeing nothing else.
Just as we close that item, I was going to say, Trustee Nash and Superintendent Dua have been leading the work with the community. And so we'll turn to them maybe to pull together the community questions and to support us in the drafting and in the next steps.
All right. Seeing nothing else under new business, this meeting is adjourned.